I am Dr. Tsewang Thinlas, Project Director, Ladakh Renewable Energy Development Agency on behalf of Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council, and we are the implementing agency in renewable energy field. So we are doing the projects for renewable energy for whole Ladakh district, and we have a different renewable energy projects like solar projects, the biggest one, and we have geothermal projects. We have wind solar projects, wind solar hybrid projects. We have solar water heater projects. We have geothermal projects, and we have water hydraulics projects, what we call small hydro projects.
Could you give us an instance of one of these projects?
Yeah, we have implemented more than 15 megawatts in numbers, around 130 numbers of solar power plants for institutions, for villages, and for schools and medical institutions. So we have catered the whole Ladakh district, especially the Leh district, for implementing solar projects. We have implemented a number of solar projects.
And how many people is there in the Ladakh district?
In our statistics is 3 lakhs, means 0.3 million people. 0.3 million people in Leh and Kargil, both districts including, and in especially the Leh district we have 0.15 millions of people.
And what are the breaks and the supports to your action when you do a solar plant or something like that? Who supports you and what can?
Yeah, funding. Mostly we implementing in Leh district, but the funding is from the Government of India. We have funding for the projects. Ladakh Renewable Energy is funded by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, M&RE. So Government of India is funding for these solar projects, hydro projects, all renewable projects are funded by mostly. Even there are private investments is also there. The council is also contributing in funding for the implementation of projects, and Government of Jammu and Kashmir is also the part of implementing projects.
And so who are the different actors you are working with? For instance, when you work with a school, do the people of the school are working with you, or you have all the projects?
The projects are purely based on the designs from the outside. The government, schools, hospitals, they are only a beneficiary. So they only use the products, but they are not a part of the project.
Okay, we heard about autonomous aspect of Ladakh. Could you explain us what it means?
Yeah, Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council is a concession facility where the government of Jammu and Kashmir has given a facility to have their own government. So Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council is the representative of the Ladakh people. So they are the small government in Jammu and Kashmir, elected by the common people by elections.
Okay, so what is the link between this autonomous council and the central government?
So there is the power sharing for administration. Like the developmental activities have been given to the Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council. All the developmental work will be taken care by the council.
And do you have some survey to send to the government? Do you have some studies to do to the central government?
That projects and the statistics and the implementation of the developmental activity needs to be sent to the state government, to the central government of India.
And the central government send you the funding to allow you to conduct your project?
Yeah, many projects straight to the council, and many projects coming through government of Jammu and Kashmir and to Ladakh.
So for the technical aspect of energy in Ladakh, could you remember us what is the energetic mix of Ladakh, please?
Energy need. Yeah. At the moment, 100 megawatts of power is needed at the moment. If the present power demand is 100 megawatts, but then still the generation and the demand are having a big gap. So the villages are not yet fully electrified. They are not getting 24 hours of electricity. So our power supply and the demand is not matching.
And the part which is supplied, with what do you supply this demand? Which kind of primary resources?
So in the Leh district and Kargil district, we are hydropower projects are there. So hydropower project is the main source of energy for Ladakh. Beside in the remote locations, we have diesel generated sets, DG sets, which is running on the fossil fuels, backed up by the solar power plants. most of the project villages are backed up by solar power plants, but that meets few hours of their need, and rest depend on still on the diesel sets.
And do you know how many watts do you produce with hydraulics?
At the moment, around 50 megawatts of power is being produced through hydropower, and another 5 to 10 megawatts from solar sites in total.
And who controls the plant? Is it a company, a private company, or your agency who gets the building? Or?
Presently, whole energy sector is gone by the government. Ladakh, there is no private investors or private players to generate electricity just because of the non-availability of the grid. The power grid is not available here. So private investors are very worried about their revenues. So still whole energy is in the hands of the government.
Okay, and how do you manage the access for energy for your people? Because you explained us that there is a gap between the demand and the production. So how do you manage it? How do you decide where does the electricity go?
So we confine their uses, like not for heating purposes, not for cooking purposes. Only we give them for lighting purposes. Our electricity to the villages, we limit them to only for lighting their needs.
And how do you check it? How do you be sure?
Because the plants and the available solar power plants are not big enough to cater their heavy loads. Automatically it has a system of shutdown if the load exceeds its limit. So villagers are very well of that. If they use heavy appliances, the power plant will trip and they will not get electricity. So they are very well aware. Beside, our operators and maintenance people are there to keep check of that. And villagers are also cooperating in that sense to not to have more load, electrical load on our power plants.
What happens if someone do cooking with electricity?
If it within the capacity of the power plant, it's okay. But if one neighbor is using and second neighbor start using, the load capacity increases and it is electrical faults because the transmission lines also not capable of handling a huge loads. So only in the village areas, the electricity is limited for lighting only. That way, automatically it controls by our what we call transmission line, by our maintenance people and the operators. They keep track of not having heavy loads on our power plants to keep it safe.
And do you have a plan for future of energy in Ladakh?
Yes, the Ladakh Renewable Energy Development Agency is initially planning on the root level and proposes to the government of India and government of Jammu and Kashmir for implementation of huge solar power plants and hydro projects. But then in the pipeline, recently government of India has set up a committee to have 0.3 millions of megawatts of solar power plants in Ladakh. So in first phase, and they are targeting for more than that. So we have planned to have more and more solar power projects without battery backups. Presently we are implementing solar power plant with a battery backup, and battery has an issue of less life, and they have a limitation of maintenance and thing. Now we are looking for a bigger scale without batteries, so only we can harvest the daytime solar and we can feed it to the grid.
And do you have some problem during the summer with the tourism?
We at the moment in renewable energy, we do not have a direct project or any program for the tourist visitors to have such projects.
And it's your agency who decides for this plan, or do you have a meeting with the government, central government, to decide together on how do we manage energy for the future?
Yeah, we based on the ground study from the people, from the power needs from the villages, we propose to the council, the Ladakh government, and then it goes to the government of Jammu and Kashmir, and then they propose, if it is a bigger in scale, they propose it to the government of India. If it is smaller scale, they cater, and if it's very small projects, even the government Hill Council is also providing funding, and they take their own decisions, and we can implement such projects.
And we spoke about the fact that you are limited in the size of your plant. Yes. You cannot depass 10 megawatts. Could you explain us why?
At the moment, Ladakh Renewable Energy has been given by the government of Jammu and Kashmir mandate of 10 megawatts, just because of the strength available, the facility, and the what we call setup with the agency, they have confined it to 10 megawatt, but we can plan for the gigawatt scale projects, but execution has limitations. But planning and proposing and the harvesting the whole potential of renewable energy in Ladakh district, we are not what we call limited for that. There is no limitation for the planning capacities of the solar and hydro projects.
And what is the cost of different energies for consumers? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, usually people only interested in 24 hours of electricity. They don't bother about the what type of source of energy they are getting. Mostly we Ladakh have a potential of solar projects, but then beside that hydro we have been estimated around 2000 megawatts of capacity in Leh district, and we have a geothermal 200 megawatts of capacity, and for solar we have 0.1 megawatt 1 million megawatts of capacity has been estimated for future.
Yeah. And how do you do with hydraulics during winters? Because it's so cold here and the water is frozen now?
Yes, hydropower projects are successfully running even in the winters, just because the projects have been tunneled or underground projects are there in Ladakh. So even if the surface is freezing, below surface water is drawing and we are generating electricity successfully in winters also.
With the same capacity?
Yes, no, because the discharge of the river goes down, the capacity is also goes down. But at the same time, the power demand is also goes down because a lot of tourists and the local people migrates during the peak winters. So it caters the electricity need of the people. Even if the discharge goes down, the capacity generation goes down, still it is well manageable even in the winters.
And during the winters, the people cannot use the electricity for heating too?
Already the government, local administration confines or restricts people to use for electricity for heating, but there are still people are using for heating up their rooms, despite the government is not authorizing. The local government is not authorizing people to use for heating purposes during the peak winter, despite people are using, and still it can suffice the needs of the power for the public.
Is there a law which encourage or discourage renewable energies development in Ladakh?
Pardon?
Is there a law which encourage or discourage the development of renewable energies in Ladakh?
In general, public has nothing to do with the promotions of power, either renewable or non-renewable, conventional. But then government policy and few aware people always promote the renewable energy for keeping it clean, the environment. So still the government has a lot of policy for promoting renewable energy instead of the conventional energy. So we are focusing a lot on non-conventional energy like renewable energies. So people also is contributing, despite there are a lot of land issues are involved. People has to sacrifice lands for solar and other projects, renewable projects, but still people are helping in implementing renewable energy projects.
And do you know if there are other projects like oil or coal projects, not renewable energy in Ladakh?
Non-energy projects. There are still the old, initially the power came from the fossil fuel, diesel generated electricity people are still getting, and we are replacing the old diesel generated electricity. So beside hydro projects, most villages are still dependent on the diesel generated electricity. So that is the source of electricity besides renewable energy.
And how do you manage trashes from energy production? We spoke about less life batteries. So how do you manage it?
Yes, because the climate is too cold here. It goes to minus 20 degree or minus 30 degree at some places. So battery has an issue for operating if it goes below zero or freezing level. So we designed the batteries in a way that it's solar passive buildings are constructed for batteries to keep their temperature maintained. So it maintains 5 to 10 degree temperature even if it is outside minus 20 or minus 25 degree temperature. So that way we ensuring the operation temperature or the life of the batteries. Besides, we confine people to not to go for varying loads of electricity. So they have a constant loads, then it gives a longer life of the batteries. If people starting going for the heaviest load, and then suddenly half of the load or 1/3 load, then fluctuation decreases the life of the battery. So we advise the people so that their load will be constant all the time. The villagers are very cooperating and innocent. They, whenever they are being directed to keep their power constant operation, so they keep it, and then we can increase their life. At the same time, we top up with the distilled water, and we replace whenever the batteries, some of the batteries get deteriorated. So that way, technically as well as the from the public angle, it is cooperating in a way that life gets increased. Despite there is a limitation that after 5 years or 10 years we have to replace the batteries. So that is always a challenge for solar power plants with battery backups. That will be in future also.
And what you do when you replace the battery? You send it to Delhi, or what you do after?
Yeah, the company takes back the old batteries and they replace with the new batteries mostly.
Okay, and what are they doing with the old batteries? Do you know? What do the company do with the old batteries?
We have no idea whether they are recycling it or reusing it or somewhere disposing it. We do not have an idea.
And do you know what is a kind of battery? It is plon, it is lithium-ion. Do you know the?
Now the government of India is lithium-ion batteries are being promoted, but then our 90-95% of the batteries are lead acid batteries. Still the old one batteries are still being used in our power plants. But we are phasing out with the lithium-ion batteries so that it will not be damaged to the environment. So we are trying to focus, and government has released a new recommendations to use lithium-ion batteries.
So we are going to speak a little bit about development. Yeah. So could you give us your vision of development on the vision of your agency?
Yeah, in future, the Ladakh Renewable Energy is willing to tap more and more renewable energy, as Ladakh has a huge potential of renewable energy, as estimated to be more than 0.1, 0.2 millions of megawatts of renewable energy resources. As the area is a bigger area in India, the second biggest district of area, and we have more than 0.3 million square kilometers of area in Leh district. So we can have a more and more solar power projects. So in collaboration with the government of India, we are trying to focus on solar projects, especially without batteries. To that we can tap the more renewable energy projects. Beside, we are trying to replace all the DG site, diesel generated villages where they are getting power from the DG. We are replacing with the solar power plants. Most of the solar power plants have been replaced with them, but it cannot fully substitute because the loads are not yet been catered. Whatever their loads earlier they are supposed to put on the electricity from the DG sets are not able to do that. So we are trying to increase the capacity of the power plants in future, and at the same time the villages which are not yet replaced with the DGs will be replaced by solar power plant. Even with the geothermal projects are also coming in line. And the biggest difficulty is to have a grid. Northern grid is not connected to the Ladakh, and that is the biggest roadblock for the Ladakh to promote more and more renewable energy. Despite we have a hydro potential, we have solar potential, and we have geothermal potential, and even wind potential is also there. The two biggest roadblocks are the transmission lines, and the second is the road accessibility. The roads cannot cater the bigger sized loads, where the transmission grid facility needs a bigger roads to get bigger equipments to transmit the power. That is the biggest one. We trying to focus on the grid also. We are trying to focus on harvesting the solar in collaboration with the government of India and government of Jammu and Kashmir.
And the Ladakh grid is connected to India grid?
Not yet. It is being connected, but it has not yet connected. Presently the connected grid, which will complete in 1 or 2 years, is having still a smaller capacity, is around 200 megawatts. But then we can generate 0.1 million megawatts of solar, which cannot be catered by the same grid. So we are focusing on a bigger scale grid to take this solar or this renewable energy to the government of India people.
Who pay for this grid? It is the India government or the Ladakh government?
It's purely government of India projects, and there are some private investments also involved in this bigger grid and for the bigger solar projects in coming times being funded by the private investor and government of India is willing to pay.
Private investors is company, who is?
Yet not been finalized, is only a project is being prepared, which company is going to implement, but then Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India is the ministry which deals with these solar projects and the renewable energy projects.
And is there a system of taxes in India or in Ladakh?
What?
Do people have to pay every month taxes
Yes.
for the government? Yeah.
Electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two types of charges being paid. One is like they have installed electricity meters. So energy, whatever the energy units are they are consuming, that much amount of payment they have to pay for that. Secondly is lump sum sort of. So whole month you have to pay around 1,000, 2,000 rupees. Whether you use it or we don't use it, such still are going on, because government of Jammu and Kashmir replacing with the electricity meters to measure the units of consumption, but still yet to be complete. It's still incomplete.
And is there an opposition to your vision of development? For instance, you think that you have to implant a lot of solar plants, but is there an opposition to this vision?
Yes, if the grid connects to the Ladakh in a bigger capacity, the private investors and the government of India and many players are willing to invest their money in renewable energy, as Ladakh has a potential. But then the grid, we are dependent on the grid. If once the grid comes, we have many investors approaching the agency for their own private projects, and also government is also willing to spend a lot of money in renewable energy projects. That is the only, because we cannot able to implement immediately, but we are planning in future that once the grid will be connected, we can have many players who will be playing and investing in renewable energy developmenting projects.
And you have the control about the fact that if private companies should do that, it's your decision.
Yeah. We can give the project sites on PP mode, private partnership projects. We can provide on behalf of council, on behalf of government of Jammu and Kashmir. We are mandated to provide it to the private players for installing their projects.
And for you, this development is good or bad?
Without sustainable development, only development is bad, as we know. A lot of natural things have been what we call damaged due to the common people's lifestyle has been drastically changed, which may not be suiting to this area. So haphazard development is not good for this area, as a eco-sensitive area is there. Huge tourists are coming, huge fossil fuels are being used for vehicles, for generating electricity needs and many other uses. Because of that, it is very eco-sensitive area, eco-fragile area is there. Ladakh is having a less plants and climate is very dry, so the air is not getting purified if once we pollute more and more. So coming times, renewable energy can substitute and minimize the acceleration to de-accelerate the climate change. So we only renewable energy can cater this energy need, because haphazard development making a lot of people to consume more and more energy, and energy has been generated from many sources, from fossil fuels. We don't have a thermal projects here, but the government of India has a thermal projects are there. If once it gets connected with the grid, if we don't generate our own renewable energies, then we will be consuming more and more thermal projects. So that will pollute the whole area further. So to minimize this climate change, we need to focus on renewable energy projects in future, despite we have a huge potential site. So government needs to be more firm about investing renewable energy projects in coming times.
And do you know grey energy? Do you know what it means?
Development means energy. We need energy to develop things, either for construction of the house, roads, or for the factories, for the production. Energy is the only ingredient which is very essential for development. If energy is not clean, the development will not be a clean development. At the same time, without caring for the environment, climate, things can deteriorate further the habitation area of this small hill area, Ladakh.
And you think that renewables energy are totally clean or not?
Mostly renewable energy is clean, but there are projects which may damage the climate, environment also, like hydro projects, submergence of the projects, and catering more solar also. If we cover many grazing lanes and pasture lanes, and that also can be non-clean if it is not being well designed. Even if the renewable energy projects cannot be clean if it's not designed properly, keeping the environment and climate and this ecosystem into consideration, then it can be a clean if it designs well.
Yeah, but when you produce wind panels, you need energy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not renewable energy. So what do you think about this?
That cannot be, we cannot able to mitigate that, because that has to be somewhere else in the part of the country. We are not manufacturing our Ladakh. I have to only care for Ladakh. I am being a renewable energy area. But then somewhere in the other part of the world or the country, definitely producing renewable products can be a non-renewable at some point of time, but we cannot minimize that issue too. But the thing is, recurring use of non-renewable energy has to be minimized. That is one time use which will not make much difference, but then daily use of non-renewable energy can sever the climate change further.
In Ladakh, Buddhism is very huge.
Yeah.
All people are Buddhism
Okay.
or Muslim. And how do you consider this kind of culture in your development plan? Do you consider it?
We don't design much in our consideration about their culture, their religion, and their other things. For us, only we're looking for the energy aspect. It should be economical, it should be viable, and everybody should be electrified with the energy. And what it socio-economic impact, we don't go much in detail.
And what is the place of foreigners in your development? Because there is a lot of tourism. And do you consider it when you plan the future of energy? The fact that there is a lot of tourists and maybe a lot of money from them?
No, we don't design the fluctuating tourism as our basic load for planning for any plant. Only we cater for 5 years, 10 years in advance the population increase, that we cater in our design. But the tourists coming can't be a factor for designing a plant for that. But then coming 10 years or 15 years or 20 years into rise in the population, that always comes into the project consideration.
And you install solar plants, and there is also some instance like NGO, some foreigners who are installing solar plants too. And what do you think about it? Do you think it's a good thing if foreigners do install solar panels too, or do you think you should do it alone?
No, we always motivate anyone who is coming and investing in renewable energy projects. I will always appreciate and we cooperate. Because of the fund restrictions and other issues, we are not able to fully convert it to renewable energy products, just because of mostly the funding issues. And if some private person is coming and investing in renewable energy and promoting that, we always have we will cooperate and appreciate for their effort and investment.
And sometimes if one project is not good design, could you say no, you don't do it? Do you have a power on it?
Yes, if it is not sustainable in a way, that if it is not cater the people, it can make more issues in the people. If one village is being electrified with the solar, with some foreigners or from other part of the country is coming, and then others are not getting, then they put a lot of pressure on the administration to do the same for them also. Then we cannot get the same facility for other areas. Then it sometimes can make a political issue, and that can also disturb people's peace. That sometimes we say take the permission from the government, from the administration, and from our agency, which place is important, where you can place your project. They need our consultation before implementing any project anywhere. Maybe for him it may be economical, may be viable for him, but at the same time we have to keep the priority of the areas and other social issues also we have to keep into consideration. So he cannot randomly choose a place and install his own plant. They need to get the clearance from us and from clearance from the environmental side, and many clearances are needed, and public administration definitely permits only when the projects are feasible. So sometimes you may say no to some of the projects.
So for every project, for every foreigner project, you have to be agree or not on it?
But the renewable projects, we are being consulted on behalf of the council, on behalf of the district administration. We are the technical team who will be studying the projects, the feasibility of the projects. Rest lies with the administration and the policies of this state.
And it's a question which I should have asked before, but when you do a project, do you have your own team of builders and technical staff who do that? Okay.
Yeah. The Ladakh Renewable Energy Agency has a team of engineers who will design and specify the specifications. Beside that, we put a bidding for the contractors to come and execute on behalf of Council, on behalf of LAREDA, our agency.
And so we also see that the military aspect have a huge place in Ladakh societies, and the army need a lot of energy. Yes. So how do your army contribute to the development of energy's plan?
Besides the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, in collaboration with the Government of India Defence Ministry is collaborating many projects for funding to replace the army area with the renewable energy projects. Besides, army has their own projects funding for them. Some of them are implementing through our agency. Some of them are implementing themselves. They are being given funding for replacing their old non-conventional conventional energies with the non-conventional energies. So they are being funded themselves straight. Some of the projects they are giving us to implement on their behalf, and some of them by the Ministry, Defence Ministry is funding Ladakh Renewable Energy to replace these fossil fuel energy based projects with the renewable energy projects. So all the three partners are playing. Defence itself, Ministry is paying. The army units are also trying to coming our agency to replace their plants with the renewable plants, and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is also placing some funding to implement in army areas. So we are trying to replace. They will be the second, once the whole public will be replaced with the renewable energy. The defense is the biggest user or bigger occupiers of the Ladakh. They also needs to be replaced with the renewable energy because they are holding the important locations or very geo-sensitive areas. So we are trying to replace that places also. We are catering that areas also as well.
Do you have an idea of the consumption of military of army in Ladakh? The consumption of energy?
We have in details in our office how much their power demands are there, but at the moment I'm not having my data with me.
And do the army sometimes take energy for population?
Yes, at many places. Some of the power plants are for villages, but they are designed in a way that the army loads are also being catered. So that way they can use, and we are getting revenue from army for running these renewable energy projects. So some of the places where we have plenty of energy which we can supply to the army beside villages. So that is somewhere the projects are running on both army as well as the civilians.
So about the climate change, for you, what are the consequences of climate change on Ladakh?
Yeah, we have seen a very different trend since my childhood. There were sufficient snowfall in the winters, sufficient cold in the winters, and summers are not rainy because this area is a high altitude desert. So we don't supposed to get rains during the summertime. So we are feeling ourselves that the climate is changing just because winters are dry, no snowfall is there. Summer times are getting rain. Because of heavy rains, we are getting a lot of flooding into that area. That terrain is not what we call sustaining the rainfall, because the such area is such that it becomes a flood for the people. So rainfall is not used for the people. Snow was so there is drastic change in the climate. So that is concern for everyone. Now the agriculture fully dependent on our water usage and water availability. So the climate change is impacting the common people as well as the agriculture field, and all the sectors are being affected with the climate change, drastic change in the climate.
And do you think that Ladakh society do have a responsibility or not in the climate change?
Definitely. The first responsibility of the citizens, the local citizen has to be very cautious about their climate, their environment, and not to deteriorate the climate by using fossils through using renewable energy. They have a bigger role to play to mitigate this climate change.
And do you think renewable energy is the only way to fight against climate change, or there are some other way?
That can be the biggest one. Most important is the energy. Energy need is people are developing in a very huge speed. So for that, energy is the backup for development. People will not stop from the developing this area anymore. So we are not fully into what we call the old tradition. So we are changing and we are adopting a new culture, new traditions and new needs. So we are modernizing itself, we are urbanizing the villages. So all that will be the backup by the energy. So I am from the energy background. I feel the energy is the biggest to inputs for the climate change. So it can minimize or it can trigger further the climate change. So energy will be the biggest inputs for this climate change. So if it is a clean energy, it can minimize the measure. Other also factors are there which also part of the climate change, but I am only concerned with the renewable energy, and energy is the biggest one because people are developing with a huge pace. So energy is the biggest input for that.
And sometimes some people said the solution, the good solution, is to do a degrowth, is to use less energy tomorrow as yesterday. What do you think about it?
That will not going to affect much. We are promoting people to be more what we call nature friendly. We try to say try to be the original one, try to use your old traditions, but trend is such that because a lot of tourists are coming, they are also looking for a huge energy. So even if local people is willing to use less and less energy, but then the people's demand, tourists coming from the outside needs the huge energy. So to please them, to host them, energy will always be there a part. So we cannot, even if locals are aware to use less energy, to be more environment friendly, but the coming tourists and other factors will always accelerate the need of energy in any way, and people are also not easily will return to our old tradition.
And do you think you can limit the number of tourists or not?
That depends on the government policy. People are feeling that it is overburden. The local population is lesser and 3 times 4 times tourists are coming, and the whole economic or whole social, all aspects are being affected drastically. People's habits, people's lifestyle, everything is being changed. So that always be suggest as being a technical side, that it should be controlled. It should be controlled so that climate will not drastically affect. Overburdening the climate, definitely it will succumb to the load. People load more and more, because this area is habit of having less and less people, and now coming more. Definitely government should have a policy to check the visitors, the number of tourists.
And today, is there a kind of control from the government? Or
no? Only government is doing that. They are charging some fees, from environmental fees from the tourists, so that can be used for environmental purposes, to reconstruction of some of the things. So the tourists are contributing by paying some environmental fees and some charges, so that can be reused for plantation purposes or for clean energy. So government is making a policy to use the tourist visitors charging fees. That can help some of them, but then there is no clean policy to control the number of tourists at the moment.
And are you optimistic on the future? Do you think the renewable energy can fight the climate change or not?
Yes, I am very, very optimistic, just because of huge renewable energy potential is there. If there is no potential is there, then we may not be optimistic. Now we have estimated more and more solar and renewable energy capacities in Ladakh. Even geothermal is also there, which we can explore in the future. So I am very much optimistic. If people's lifestyle changes, economically we become sound, we can have more renewable energy by replacing the old one. So I am very much optimistic that in coming time Ladakh will be a clean area.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, the world is not just Ladakh, and climate change is a problem of the world. And do you think in all the world we can replace the old energy by renewable energy?
Every drop makes an ocean. If Ladakh can be an example or a model for the whole country of India to be a clean city and a role model for implementing renewable energy, the whole country may motivate, and one country motivate other countries, and this way whole world will change over the period of time. So we can control climate change step by step. So this area is more sensitive, and we are very much aware of the climate change because it directly affecting life, not by people's health, but it is by flooding, by a shortage of water that is affecting us immediately. Others are chronic diseases are coming just because of climate change. They may not able to observe. We are observing, and we are very sensitive because the areas yet are being flooded. We are not getting water for irrigations. We are very much aware, but we are looking for solutions. Maybe the funds constraint, we may not able to replace everything with the renewable energy, but coming times we are optimistic in a way that we can achieve it. We can replace the whole area with renewable energy in coming times.
Okay, so we are reaching the end of the interview, and at the end of the interview we have a children's question. We are working with a voluntary school of jewelry, and the children who are in this school are asking some questions to the people we are meeting. So today we have a question from Noelie. She is 18 years old, and could you answer as if she was in front of you?
Yeah, okay, I consider it.
Okay, so the question is, what are the consequences of inequalities of energy access around the world?
Yes, that will make an economical impact. Richer people may be richer, the poor people will be poor again, just because they are not access to the energy needs, and that will make a huge political issues because of the differences in the people's lifestyle. One is getting more facility, and other is not getting their daily needs. That make a huge impact on the peace of the area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.